On this Friday night, tragedy strikes the Royal Military College. 4 cadets killed, and the mystery of how their car ended up in the water. The mission to free thousands trapped in a Mariupol steel mill.
We are doing everything we can.
As the people of Kyiv suffer more brutality from Moscow. Rolling thunder.
Ottawa is still a go.
The protesting bikers riding into our nation's capital, making locals nervous. And she's unstoppable.
You look like you can't believe it. You look happy.
I can't believe it.
A Canadian Jeopardy champion who just can't lose.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Chris Galis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says another mass grave has been discovered. He says the unconfirmed number of bodies were found in an area on the outskirts of Kyiv. It's unclear how many were there, but about 900 bodies have been discovered since the war began. The gruesome discovery comes as officials fear civilians in hiding can't go much longer without food and water. Some say they've been without electricity for weeks. And Mariupol's mayor is asking Russia to show some humanity to allow people, including children, to safely leave the city and a nearby industrial complex. At the same time, intense fighting in the eastern Donbass region has led to more casualties on both sides. Redmond Shannon has tonight's top story.
This video released by Ukraine's Azov battalion claims to show the aftermath of a shelling attack on a field hospital inside the Azovstal steelworks this week. It's thought about 1,000 civilians and 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers are still inside the facility, the last holdout of Ukrainian forces in the port city of Mariupol. The unit's deputy commander says if Russia's military wants to save face, they will allow the United Nations in here to evacuate civilians.
I can only tell you, we are doing everything we can to make it happen.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres gave little detail on the plan when meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky Thursday. The Ukrainian president's office said they hope to attempt an evacuation Friday. There is no word on its progress. Thousands of kilometers away in Rome, the refugee wives of Azov soldiers are not holding out much hope.
He said that situation is horrible and that Russians are bombing Azovstal every day. Many corridors were attacked by Russians and I don't believe them.
Outside the plant, there are an estimated 100,000 civilians also trapped in the city as the war rages around them. Ukraine conceding it is suffering heavy troop losses across the Donbass region, but it insists that Russian casualties are even higher. There are, sadly, also more civilian deaths. This woman's 14-year-old grandson was killed when their home was hit by Russian fire.
He asked, "Grandma, will I live?" I said that he would, but look what happened. I betrayed him. I am alive and he is not.
And another escalation Friday, Russia's defense ministry publishing video of what it says are cruise missiles fired from one of its Black Sea submarines. The first time they've been used since the war began in February. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Finland and Sweden say as the war goes on, the two countries will deepen their military cooperation with each other, whether they apply for NATO membership or not.
The overall impression is that if Sweden and Finland apply, there will be it will be positively received by the NATO members, not the least because Sweden and Finland would then be net contributor of security.
Russia has threatened serious consequences if Finland and Sweden join NATO. Neither country has stated an intention to do so far. Some people have returned home to Kyiv under the impression it's safe to do so, but many are having second thoughts after 2 missiles launched by Russia smashed into the city. A journalist's body was found this morning in the rubble, and as Crystal Goomansingh reports, nowhere in Ukraine is out of harm's way.
Twisted heaps of metal, slabs of fallen concrete, and workers scrambling to clear away pieces of several buildings. The destruction caused by missiles Thursday night, a reminder that Russia is not finished with Kyiv.
Ми знаходилися з моєю донькою на кухні.
My daughter and I were at the kitchen, and there was an explosion at the time. I first saw a flash and then heard the sound.
Pavlov Kozetsky just returned with his family a few days ago, thinking it was safe. His youngest child thought the thud of the missile striking a building near his was thunder. His older children understand Ukraine has been dragged into a war.
Насправді, ми відчуваємо дуже велике.
We are very angry our country is under attack from Russia, and I agreed to fight against this country for sake of my daughters.
At least 8 buildings in the Shevchenkivsky district in the capital sustained damages in the strikes. One woman, a journalist, Vera Hirich, was killed in her home. Russia claims it used 5 precision missiles and destroyed a weapons factory workshop. As the largest land war in Europe since the Second World War stretches on and more lives are lost, the level of anger rises.
I will collect Molotov cocktails, just in case, and we will remove those bandits from our country, and we will remember everyone.
Maintaining a fighting spirit is not easy, especially when you've lost your home.
If earlier I saw a plane, it was not scaring me, but now I have a fear.
Anastasia invited Global News into her bombed-out building in Irpin, but didn't feel up to appearing on camera. She says she's salvaging what she can and feels bitter.
We recently bought this apartment, and we really like the city. The city became very close to us.
Irpin is just outside of Kyiv. In mid-March, people started fleeing because of shelling, but many were killed or wounded on the roads trying to escape Russian forces. The area was held for a short time as Russia prepared to descend on the capital. Infrastructure in previously occupied areas is a major problem.
Do you want me to open this so I can see?
This was the bridge, if you can call it that we used to leave the city. Some of the infrastructure was destroyed by Russia. Other parts were taken out by Ukrainians trying to delay the troops from getting to Kyiv. Roads, utilities, even water is still in the process of being restored in many areas. In cities such as Irpin and Bucha, city officials are encouraging businesses to reopen so people can access supplies to rebuild or at least patch things up and make them livable. With the renewed attacks here in Kyiv, the question is it too soon? Chris?
Crystal Goomansingh in Kyiv. Thanks very much, Crystal. Now, mystery surrounds a late-night tragedy on the campus of Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario. 4 cadets were killed. Seán O'Shea joins us from Kingston with what we've learned so far. Seán.
Chris, what we know is that 4 cadets have died, and the questions now are how could they have ended up in a vehicle in the water here behind me. That is the Royal Military College just behind me, historic Royal Military College, founded in 1874. Classes are over, exams are done, but the students are still on campus, and 4 cadets were in that vehicle, ended up in the water and died. Now, the Department of National Defense is not saying a whole lot about this, but about 2 hours ago, the vehicle was pulled out using a crane from the water just at the edge here, and now the investigation to be conducted by the Department of National Defense primarily will begin. The DND issued a statement including some sympathy for the families and for the victims, saying in part their priority is to ensure that naval and officer cadets, staff and families are cared for and supported. They said this loss is felt across the RMC community, saying they extend their deepest condolences to all members, their families, and their friends during this difficult time. Now, the Royal Military College campus is located at Point Frederick on the peninsula, just slightly southeast of the city of Kingston. That's where Lake Ontario meets the St. Lawrence River, and that's where we are right now, Chris.
Seán, I know it's tough to read anything from the color of a vehicle, but it certainly seemed to be that deep military green. Is there any indication that they were in a DND vehicle and what they might have been doing at 2 a.m. in the morning there?
It's possible it was a DND vehicle. It's too early to tell, and the Department of National Defense, as I said, being very tight-lipped about this, not saying much at all beyond the very basics, and this investigation in its early stages, but a tragedy here in Kingston at an institution that is well known, and many known graduates here. It's a very important institution here, and a lot of questions to be asked in the days ahead, Chris.
No doubt. Thanks for your coverage. That's Seán O'Shea in Kingston, Ontario. Thank you, Seán. Tension in the nation's capital as the city prepares for a weekend of demonstrations linked to the so-called Freedom Convoy protests that brought downtown Ottawa to a standstill. This time, hundreds of motorcycles are rolling into town. Dan Spector is in Ottawa for us. And Dan, what's the bikers' message, and is it something police see as a threat?
Chris, the bikers say they want to bring dignity back to the National War Memorial. They're upset with how it was fenced in at some times during the convoy protests. So they are coming to do that, and they're planning to be here in great numbers tomorrow. How many will actually show up? We'll have to wait and see. But they are just one of the multiple groups coming here to the nation's capital to protest this weekend. Just behind me, people are gathering for a rally associated with the Freedom Fighters Canada group. And yes, police are taking this very seriously. They are deploying in great numbers and employing some interesting strategies in what promises to be a very loud weekend. It's set to be the warmest weekend of the spring, and Ottawa residents don't want anything to interrupt it.
The route has been planned, and we hope they're just in and out.
Rolling Thunder, Ottawa is still a go.
Neil Sheard is a Canadian Forces veteran and was a prominent voice from this year's occupation. Now he's inviting veterans and others to join Rolling Thunder Ottawa on the National War Memorial Saturday morning. They'll be on motorcycles and plan to meet just outside Ottawa City Centre before moving toward Parliament Hill.
Give back dignity to the monument and give dignity back to the veterans.
Though Sheard and other groups involved are advocating for peaceful demonstrations, police are preparing for more this time.
Police have established a motor vehicle exclusion zone, and protesters will not be allowed to drive into the downtown core.
The RCMP has been in touch with local Ottawa Police Service and is providing additional resources.
Several tow trucks have already arrived. The plan is to bar any vehicles related to the protest from getting close to the War Memorial or Parliament Hill.
I think the response is better.
This weekend is going to be a test for them.
Brian Latour is organizing a counter-protest. He thinks Rolling Thunder is using veterans to obscure what he believes the group really represents. This gathering here on Parliament Hill is growing by the second. Chris, people gathering with Canadian flags and a lot of signs with similar slogans to what we saw during the convoy protest. They will end the evening with a march through the Byward Market, and then we'll just have to wait and see how things develop tomorrow. Back to you.
We'll definitely keep an eye on it. Dan Spector in Ottawa. Thank you, Dan. Canada becomes a player in global vaccine production. Coming up, the plans for a new plant and the promise of mRNA medicine beyond COVID. Plus, the dying dream of home ownership, what Gen Z is doing for housing instead.
Canada, that has long been leaders in research around mRNA, will now be also leaders in delivering mRNA to Canadians and to the world with this investment.
Prime Minister Trudeau announcing Montreal as the new home for the promised Moderna vaccine production plant. It'll be the company's first factory in Canada. As many as 300 people are expected to work at the facility to produce up to 100 million mRNA vaccine doses a year. It will also help secure long-term supply of COVID-19 vaccines in this country. Construction on the plant is scheduled to begin this year and wrap up by 2024. Now, Moderna has also asked Health Canada to authorize its pediatric COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 6 months to under 6 years of age. As Eric Sorensen reports, it covers an age group barred from getting a shot since the vaccine rollout began in Canada in late 2020.
Giselle Cherie's son, Aiden, is almost 3, and she has spent much of his young life worrying about him getting COVID and hoping for a vaccine.
I just want to protect him from getting sick, or if he does still get sick, I want to protect him from, any severe outcomes.
Moderna is the first vaccine maker to ask Health Canada to authorize a low dose of its Spikevax for children as young as 6 months and up to age 6 who've not till now been eligible.
There's still a big unmet medical need, so I think we're seeing cases in children raising, so I think we need to give the option to parents to vaccinate their children.
Infectious disease doctors are delighted because kids are at risk in the current wave of COVID.
We've had a number of kids, younger kids, die, and so that's protection of the children, but also protection of the families.
The older you are, the more likely you've had at least one vaccine dose. As of this month, Canadians over 60 are more than 95% vaccinated. Younger adults, including teenagers, are close to 90%, and children 5 to 11 who've only just been receiving vaccines recently are at 57%. But kids up to the age of 4 are close to 0, so vaccinating that group can only add to the country's overall immunity. But for some parents, there is reluctance. Emily Borghese is vaccinated, but her child is only 6 months old, and they've both had COVID.
I had Omicron. It wasn't that bad, so I don't think she needs it. It's not worth the risk.
In a statement, Health Canada says it will only authorize Spikevax if its independent and thorough scientific review of the data shows the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks in this age group. The approval process could last several weeks.
We have full confidence that the application will be looked at in the very best way.
And doctors say if the drug is safe, the greater risk would be not vaccinating children.
The risk of long-term side effects on the kids is negligible compared to the risk of children getting COVID, getting sick with it, and transmitting it to other vulnerable people.
Giselle Charest doesn't need convincing.
I'm looking forward for this to be over.
Aren't we all? Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Little hope for home ownership. Just ahead, why more young Canadians are giving up on the market. Canada's economy grew more than expected in February as pandemic restrictions eased. The GDP increased just over 1%, the largest monthly gain since March 2021. 80% of industries saw growth. The biggest jump was in urban public transit. It soared 24%. Food and accommodation services rose more than 15%. The economic growth is adding to pressure for the Bank of Canada to hike interest rates again to help cool things down. But it's a move that could make buying a home even harder. And as Ann Gaviola reports, home ownership is already a distant dream for many Canadians.
There are signs that the housing market that was on a tear during the pandemic is taking a breather, but the damage may already be done for many who'd hoped to get in eventually. Polling by Ipsos exclusively for Global News shows more than 60% of respondents hoping to get into the market are now giving up.
It's going to continue to percolate as housing prices rise, inflation continues, and interest rates go up.
People in BC and Ontario, home to the least affordable housing markets, feel most resigned to renting or living with their parents. The dream hasn't been dashed everywhere, though. In Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the Atlantic provinces, it lives on for the majority. There are generational divides, too. Respondents under 35 say owning a home is less important now than it was a quarter century ago, a sentiment not shared as widely by older generations. And opinions differ when it comes to outside-the-box solutions to home ownership. Younger Canadians are most likely to be open to co-ownership with family and friends, with 3 out of every 4 Gen Z respondents and nearly 60% of millennials saying they're game to purchase with others.
A lot of people are looking at the home ownership question in a new way, as you said, considering other alternatives like buying a home with somebody else or a partnership, or even just putting their money somewhere else.
The federal budget pledged $10 billion to help boost the supply of affordable housing over the next 5 years. There's also a tax rebate for first-time homebuyers to a maximum of $40,000, which doesn't go far in markets like Toronto and Vancouver. 75% of respondents say these measures won't make enough of a difference, and economists agree.
In terms of ownership costs, with interest rates rising, things are going to get even more difficult.
Ann Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
18 well-earned wins and counting, where Canadian Matea Roach ranks among Jeopardy's greatest. Next. Reigning Jeopardy champ Matea Roach scored her 18th straight win last night, the most of any Canadian contestant ever. The 23-year-old from Halifax has won nearly $500,000 so far and doesn't seem to have a weakness. And as Mike Drolet shows us, Matea is positioning herself right up among the show's greatest players of all time.
Who is Yates? With just seconds to spare, you wrote down the correct response. And did you wager anything? $1.
Matea Roach kept her fans on the edge of their seats this week, winning one game by $1.
What is Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison? That's correct.
And turning a close game into a blowout with another obscure answer.
You look like you can't believe it. You look happy.
I can't believe it.
That last win, her 18th straight, thrust the Nova Scotia-raised Torontonian into the pantheon of all-time Jeopardy greats. Ken Jennings, who is now a part-time host, is considered the GOAT, or greatest of all time, after winning 74 games in a row. Amy Schneider with 40 wins, Matt Amodio at 38, and James Holzhauer at 32 make up the Mount Rushmore of super champions. And then there's Matea, who just needs 2 more wins to move up to 5th all-time.
Is it too soon to start making comparisons between her and some of our other great season 38 super champions?
Oddly enough, both Schneider and Amodio's win streaks occurred this season, so Roach will eventually face them in the Tournament of Champions. And since Jeopardy keeps statistics on everything, there's proof she's in their league.
And when it comes to accuracy, her 92% correct response rate is right between Matt's 90% and Amy's 95%.
Okay.
Really double.
And why not? She not only holds the record for most wins by a Canadian, she's also the youngest super champion ever. How long can she keep this streak going? We know the answer will come in the form of a question. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Well done, Matea. That is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Chris Galis. Tonight's Your Canada is the Saskatchewan Legislative Building in Regina. Please keep your emails coming. Send your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks very much for watching. Nitu Garcha will be with you tomorrow. Hope you have a great weekend.